actually okay with this full fluff tonight. I'm honestly very surprised because the humidity is like 80 something percent and edging upwards. So my hair being frizzy is normal. But considering I recently cut it, I mean very recently cut it, and it hasn't settled yet, and that I used one of my turbans today for the first time in like forever. It really should look like a big foosball. We're not there, and I'm good with that. So hello, and welcome to domytriesthis. I hope you brought your cuppa. Today's coffee mug is my signed Shamar Moore coffee mug that my daughter got for me. So this is his Criminal Minds Shamar Moore mug. I first noticed Shamar Moore in Birds of Prey like decades ago. He was a baby. But he was a good-looking baby. He's still a good-looking baby, folks. At any rate, my daughter did find this for me because, you know, hey, I really like Shamar Moore. My tea, I don't have my little bags with me. I left them on the counter. We're having cat problems again, so I'm a little forgetful. But this is white chocolate mocha black tea. It's one of the few black teas I've really enjoyed. I'm not sure how much I'm going to enjoy it this time because we are out of sugar. This mug got the last little bit of sugar, and it did not get enough sugar, so I put in honey. And I am not a big fan of honey in tea, and that is just a me thing. The way honey tastes just does not, I don't know. It doesn't work in the tea, and it doesn't sweeten the tea as much as I like. So, but we've got a mix of sugar and honey, so we will see how it does. We will go ahead and give her a sip and get started. As usual, double bagged. I love the smell of this one. So I'm hoping I like the way it tastes. Yeah, the sugar is way off, and I'm getting way too much of the black tea already. Not particularly thrilled with that. It needs more sugar. We are talking about some of the weirder things of my tree and some of the things that I've learned. Some of these are not weird, although some of you may find them weird. However, they're very, well, I can't say they're very common. Having a vampire is not common. That will be explained. I had a lot more to cover than I actually ended up covering for this. So we're going to be back here at least one more time, and I suspect two more times, because I am sure between now and when I get the next one done on this topic, more strange crap will show up. Some of this has to do with the way Ancestry is set up. Some of this has to do with it being an island. Some of it has to do what happened when the island was conquered. So there are a lot of different things that go into the circumstances that create some of the strangeness. While we're talking about some of the odder things and more unusual things for most people on the tree, we create this look. If you're interested in any of the Ancestry stuff for my tree, or, you know, to learn about doing your tree, I guess, you could hear about some of the things that may come up. Or you're interested in the look, or both, keep on watching. We are 4,000 strong on that tree now. How's that for nuts? Well, almost 4,000, 3,900 and some change. I've only been doing this for about 18 months now, and I am pretty proud of my tree. I have really worked hard to learn the best process, and I'm actually also doing a little bit of a learning curve on the language for half my tree. We're going to mostly be talking about my Botaquin side, my Puerto Rican side. Botaquin is what the indigenous called the island before Columbus showed up. And so I will probably continue to refer to it as Borderquin. But that is the primary focus when I'm working on my tree. I haven't really done much with my mother's side. There are various reasons for that. And some of that includes the fact that, you know, for the most part, it's going to sound terrible, Mom's family has not impressed me. So I have been focused on my dad's side. Besides that, you know, my dad, I feel I was robbed of my father and the time with him that I should have had, and, you know, at least being able to talk to him, you know, maybe spend some time with him, something. So I feel I was kind of robbed of that, and so focusing on his tree is my way of connecting, of reconnecting. So I've been working on the tree for about 18 months, and as most of you know, as all of you should know, Borderquin is a very small island. So it has limited capacity for population. Just because of that, there's some interesting things in the tree that have occurred. There's something called, I think I've mentioned it before, but endogamy, and yeah, something like that. Basically, that's when there's, because you have a limited population, that population is pretty much intermarries a lot. A law was passed that that births had to be registered early on by a certain time, or the people, the parents the family would be fined. That's not doing as much as I'd hoped. So there's certain things about the island and about the rules and about the population that have resulted into some interesting things. And then on top of that, as a territory and with the native population being treated the way it was, there's a little bit of problems with accuracy in the records. So we're going to talk about, like I've mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about some of the wildest things in my tree. And first of all, I had a great-grandfather whom I call my vampire grandfather, great-grandfather. All right, so I have to read this because of the dates. The documents I found, the legitimate, here's your death certificate, here's those documents, says he died in May 1897. But he got married in August of that year. Now, the thing with these documents, what you check for is you check for parents and grandparents wherever you can. So, and I don't no longer take family tree hints very often. There are some real screwed up shit in the hints and stuff. I will sometimes use them as a bouncing off point. But we have things like some guy had the daughter of someone being, well, her mother was born after she was. I have someone else that I noticed recently took one of the documents that I had, a christening document, and then attached it to a different person. A lot of these people just do not read what they're doing. They don't pay attention. We have a lot of my family comes from Belmont. And in the 1800s, they didn't migrate much, but we have people who were born in Belmont being christened in Mexico. So there's a lot of errors because people don't read, they don't pay attention, they see the hints, they grab the hints, and they assume that those hints are correct. They aren't. Some of them might be. I have, I have uploaded documents and found other documents. At any rate, so for each of these documents for this man, I did double check. Who's the parents? Do they list the grandparents? It's him dying in May and getting married in August. And then he had a kid in 1899, his first child. What? Quite obviously, errors happen, but that one was just like, what? So I call him my vampire great-grandfather. Although how the vampire had kids, I don't know, but because vampires presumably do not have children, but he definitely survived his death. His death was much overrated, and he has got to be one of the most bizarre things I've run into in my tree. Now, that doesn't mean I don't run into other date issues. For example, because of that problem with, I shouldn't say problem, because of that law that children had to be registered by a certain point or that they would be fined. I'm erasing notes, so I try not to repeat myself. I have run into more than one document where, well, I'll have two documents. I'll have the christening document because almost every kid got christened, at least in the past. I don't know about now, but in the past they got christened. And then they will also have a birth document. And there are a lot of these where the birth date or the christening date is before the birth date on the birth document. And now, like I said, that has to do with the fines and things like that. They had to do what they had to do. Dates can be all over the place. I think the biggest date difference I have found has been about 7 years. But people told me they have found date differences up to 10. So it can be confusing. This is one of the reasons why you have to know who the parents and the grandparents are, which can get very difficult when you have a child who is esposito, which means they were left at someone's house to be taken care of. You don't have the parents, you just have the adoptive parents. Or if the mom registered the birth and didn't list the dad, all of a sudden you're out of luck where dad is. Or sometimes I've had one or two, and it's from what I'm hearing, it's not common. It does happen, but you'll have the dad register the kid, and you don't know who the mom is. One of the things that I have appreciated about the way the Boricua and the Spanish do their naming, though, is that they include both parents' names, or at least they used to. This is something that's falling out of favor now with a lot of the current families, current births. Nowadays, and particularly if they have moved into the U.S., the U.S. does not have this thing, but you will have both surnames of the child. So, technically, my mother was a Birch. My dad was a Caballero. So technically, before I got married, my name was Caballero, my dad, E. and Birch. Caballero E. Birch, or Caballero Birch. Because that's how they do their naming, which makes it really much easier to find shit. Every time I go back to my husband's tree to try to work on his, I get a little overwhelmed. Because that naming convention isn't part of the U.S., right? And so you're working on these last names, and you're hoping that the Mary Smith you found is the right Mary Smith, because both she and the other Mary Smith have Smiths as their parents, so it's much harder to verify, I find. That didn't come out too bad. I am not unhappy with that. The double surname just makes it so much easier. It really does. So, I really wish, honestly, it's one thing that I'm like, could you please pick this up and use this? And I'm probably going to try to find a way to use it anyway when I go back to my husband's tree, or if I work on my mom's tree again. Maybe I'll put a dash or something in between the names, something so that I can get both the father's name and the mother's name in the name. It's a very Spanish way of doing it, but I think it's probably the best way to do it. There are some conventions that I've noticed that very occasionally get upended. Okay, so obviously on a marriage certificate, when they mention mama, they're going to mention mama's mother and father, and they're going to have the mother's maiden name, just like they do with the husband, his mother and father, and then his name. Whenever they have kids, usually you get that double naming. So mama's name, when you're doing a search, I use Family Search, and I'm starting to use a place where they've indexed a lot of stuff that is not indexed on Family Search. Indexing is when they have all the records and they have information about the record, including all the names and things. So the unindexed stuff you actually have to translate. But when you find something on Family Search, under the mother, you will get the mother's name and then her first surname. So, talk about my mom. She was a Birch Pinson. Let's just use that. So, on my birth certificate, it would not say Arnaldo Caballero and Joanna Caballero. It would say Arnaldo Caballero and Joanna Birch. That's how you get the two names. So whenever if I searched for my birth certificate under her name, I would search it under Birch, because that's how it would show up. When a woman dies in Puerto Rico and she's been married, her death certificate does not include her husband's name. I mean, on her surname. So my mother would be normally Joanna Birch Pinson on her death document if it was done in Puerto Rico. There have been a couple of instances where this has not been the case, where we have found married women who were married, who their husband's name was on the certificate instead, which is really interesting. It's not common. It would not be common to have her certificate say Joanna Caballero. So she married my dad, Caballero. She divorced him when I was 3. She says it was earlier than that, but according to the records, I was about 3. Now, some interesting things happened on the records as a result of that divorce, and then she remarried. So she remarried my stepfather, who was Evans. Her records. Okay, so she is Birch when she got married. She got divorced and was still Birch. She remarried. And then my stepfather, Evans, wanted to adopt me. And apparently one of the things they did to account for my birth under his name, because this is back when they closed the adoption records. You couldn't see the original birth certificate. In fact, my mother had told me my original birth certificate was destroyed. So what they did when she married my dad is they created a record in California. This is just weird. And I think they did it because that's where she went. after she left my dad, she went home to her family in California. So I think that the reason this record is in California is because she went back home when she took me away from the island. She went back to her mom. Perfect sense, right? Makes perfect sense. So there is a record of my mother giving birth to me in California. It's not where I was born, but I don't know if she chose that state, if they chose that state. I don't know. I don't know who did what. I don't. I stumbled on the record, and yeah, so it shows her as being 62 or 63. She remarried or something. I don't know. Shows her as married, but gives a birth certificate for me. Basically, it's just to support that adoption, I think, with my stepdad. I think that's what it is. I'm guessing, folks. I'm really guessing, because I ran on these records and it was just strange. All right, so then she remarried, right? She remarries. Hi, Sora. She remarries and becomes Evans, dropping the birch and dropping the caballero. And I know this is a long story. Another reason why we'll probably have to do more than one of these. We may have to do 3. So she marries my stepdad. And then she divorces him, and again, she goes back to California. She's a Birch again. She's been going by Birch. She's been going by Joanna Birch this whole time. For years. Years, literally. I was 13 when she divorced Evans, and I think she died in 2002. I think. So, I'd had kids already. I'd been married and had kids already. So, we're looking at least 10, 15, 20 years that she was a Birch, right? I found her death document. And her gravesite. And she's listed as Caballero. I'm like, what? It's her. It's her documents. I know it's her. I verified it's her. But I cannot understand why they put her down as Caballero. Why is she not listed as Birch? It is bizarre. It doesn't even follow the norms of the island, much less what I would think that she would have done. I mean, she made it pretty clear that she neither trusted nor liked my father. She made it clear that she thought he was a horrible person. She said things about him that are part of the reason why I eventually gave up looking for him initially. I mean, who wants to meet someone that you're told constantly didn't want you and treated your mom like shit? And I mean, I'm sure some of that was the paranoia starting up even then. But at the same time, so if she's that paranoid about it, why is she a Birch? I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get it. It's very strange. And I have run into a few other cases, very few. I think I can think of 1 or 2 off the top of my head, where a woman on her death certificate shows up under her husband's name instead of her own. It is very strange. Because that's, like I said, that's not the tradition of the island. So I wanted to get to at least one more thing before, on this particular video, and that's, we mentioned I keep hoping I pronounce it correctly, the endogamy, endogamy. It's endogamy. So it's endogamy. I will butcher it for the rest of my life, probably. All right. So when I first started doing my tree, no one actually talked about it. This tendency for small where you have small island groups or small groups that are very insulated and insular, marrying into one another. I mean, you can kind of assume it, right? We're talking a very small island, limited outside, honestly limited outside contact. I mean, they had the slave owners and the, you know, all the, they had the Spanish and the Portuguese, and, you know, then they had the blacks come in and stuff like that. But they were still a small insular island. They still had a limited population. So intermarriage is going to happen. It's just it's the way it is. But when I first started this, nobody mentioned that to me. And later, somebody had mentioned it to me, but I hadn't run into it at all on my tree at that point. I mean, literally, I hadn't, to my knowledge. I actually probably had on one of them and just didn't realize it. So I was peripherally aware of the possibility, but like I said, I hadn't run into it yet. We must qualify the yet. And I ran into my first one, and I'll be honest with you. The one thing that I like about the way Ancestry is set up, and I don't work on any of the other trees, and any of the other, places where you can build your tree, and they may have something similar. But with the way that they set this up, it's really easy for you to go ahead and hunt down a name. Hunt down a familiar name on your tree and see where he is, he or she. And if in any way it's where you are, if that makes sense. So you're working your tree, and let's say you're working this small little group, and then you run into this name that sounds familiar. So you can go, and I usually open a second window and put in that person's name and see if he's somehow attached to that small little group. And I ran into my first one. I'll be honest. The very first time I think I ran into it, I noted it was kind of odd that these names were familiar, but I didn't check them at the time. I was still learning. I didn't check them. So it's actually probably the second time that I ran into it that I went, oh, wait a minute. This name sounds familiar. Now, to be fair, all the names are going to sound familiar because everybody is Juan, Maria, Carmen, Jose. I mean, seriously, people sit there and say that this will be a stereotype. It's not. I have Carmen's, Jose, Josefas. It's when you get an unusual name for your tree that you really notice that unusual name. So running into a second Jose Rodriguez may not ring any bells right away. It's when you run into Jose Rodriguez, and he's the second Jose Rodriguez with Juan Rodriguez as his dad and Carmen Matos as his mother. And that's when you have to start paying attention. So I ran into, I think it was my second one. My first one, it did not register. I still don't know if I caught it and fixed it because I don't remember who it was. It's terrible. That sounds terrible, but like I said, the names, they run together. But I ran into my first one and was really surprised. One of the things that I have discovered about this is, one, in a way it's a pain in the ass, because you will have information on these two people who are the same person. So you need to merge them. And then you need to merge their wives. And then you need to merge the children. And the merging is a pain in the ass. It really is. Especially if for some reason you have something different in the name from one to the other. So I literally have to have 2 different windows with my tree in it, so I can look at the names and go, oh, this one says Carmen Maria Rodriguez, and this one just says Carmen Rodriguez. And they're born the same year, they died the same year, they married the same husband. This is the same person. So that you can merge them. Because sometimes Ancestry won't find the duplicate. It won't list the duplicates for you. You have to find them yourself. And it's a pain in the ass. That part's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. It's a pain in the ass. But on the other hand, it can actually save you some time. Because if you're working on somebody, you likely have information. You will have more information on one than the other usually. Sometimes you have them about this. You have the same information, or sometimes it's different information but about the same amount. Like one you'll have the birth document and the other one you'll have the death document. Things like that. A lot of the documents will cross over. I mean, the documents will cross over if they're the same person, obviously. So, but for me, I have found that usually when I find an endogamous, I hope I pronounced that correctly, an endogamous relationship, I usually find that one of them has more documentation and more information, possibly even more correct information, because, as I mentioned, I've been learning better research techniques, and I'm getting better at translating things. So there may be stuff on one person that I didn't translate because I didn't. Don't get me wrong, I'm still terrible at the language, but I am getting better at finding the important parts on the documents. I'm learning where to look for things and how to read certain names. Certain words are finally becoming a part of, I mean, I couldn't use them in a sentence, so to say, but they're becoming a part of my research language, I guess. I find that because I now have so many more tools and so much more information and so much more ability for this type of research, that whoever I'm actually on first, that I'm on when I realize I have this endogamous relationship, and I usually have more information on that person that I'm currently working on. And then when I go find the other one, there's either no information or there's very little information. Or even worse, there's information based on other people's trees, which I have been trying to remove. Most of these endogamous relationships are cousins. I have 2 lines that tend to blend a lot. There's a lot of cousining going on in there. But it's seriously. My Chare, Normandia, and I can't remember the Estrada lines. I think it is. It might be Vasquez. There was a lot. There has been a lot. So as I was saying, most of these endogamous relationships are cousins. And it is along, for me, it is along a couple of particular lines. From Normandia, Chare, we will get in more into them the next time we talk, because those people are those ancestors are a whole topic in and of themselves. Okay, really, they are. But so it's along 3, maybe 4 particular lines that I see a lot of this has been happening. And it's, like I said, it's also mostly cousins, or it's in-laws. Someone will marry his dead brother's wife, things like that. And also, it tends to be further out. 1800s. Early 1800s. Well, mid. I haven't gotten much earlier than the 1800s, the early 1800s on mine. I don't think I've found anybody in the 1700s. It's really, some of the documents are really hard to find. So, but I have not found this endogamy, endogamy? I will get this word right. I really will, one of these days. I haven't found any of this endogamy, you know, closer to home, so to speak. I haven't found any in the 1900s, really, I don't think. I would have to look to verify that. So, like I said, most of that's cousins, but we found one. And one of the things is, if you're close enough in relationships, your first cousin, second cousin, whatever, if you're close enough in relationship, if you're in the same family group, on the marriage certificate, there usually is something, there should be something, that basically gives you dispensation to marry because you're related. Okay? And I have someone who's been really helping and guiding me as I learn a lot of this process. She's been helping me go deeper into the hows to do this and learning, you know, more advanced ways of doing the research. And she also helps out a lot with translation, and has helped me learn words and things to be able to start doing as much translation as I can on my own. She has better eyes than I do, so if I run into something that I absolutely cannot read, she will translate for me. She's been amazingly helpful. Thank you, Liza. Don't shoot me for not being able to pronounce your name. As you have seen today, I cannot pronounce things. So, at any rate, she's been helping me a lot with all of that, which has been really nice, and I appreciate deeply, and I've been learning a lot more. But she and I were working on something, or I was working on something, I think, and I found this note. I hadn't been paying attention to some of the close cousins that marry, but I did find a note on the side of this one girl's marriage license, and for the life of me, I could not read it. It was not being. These documents are very hard to read sometimes. They're very flowy, and a lot of them, particularly some of the older ones, part of the problem is it's very faded, and it looks like a rat chewed through some of them or something. They've gone through hurricanes, they've gone through all of this shit, so they look like very old, tattered documents. So those are really hard to read anyway. For others, there's this real flowy, calligraphic-like script that can be very hard to read. Sometimes things will bleed through from the other side that makes it hard to read. And some of the priests just didn't have good handwriting, okay? We're just gonna say it. Some of these priests needed help with their handwriting. But at any rate, so I was trying to read this note on the side, and I said, what does this say? I cannot read this. I don't understand what they're trying to say. And she looked at it, and she said, oh, wait, what? And apparently, the dispensation was for someone who's not like your second or third or fourth cousin. It was for someone who's like in your immediate family. And we flipped out a little bit trying to figure out what the hell and where this girl was and who it was she married. Turns out she married her uncle. For a while there, we thought she married her grandfather. But no, she married her uncle. I don't know, folks. Like I said, I get it. Small island. But your uncle? Really? Now, she wasn't a child when she married him, I don't think. I think I've only run into a few, very few, less than 15-year-olds girls who've been married. Very few. I mean, like, I can't even think of any few. But I'm sure there's at least one on there that's below 15. And the thing is with Ancestry, you try to put someone below a certain age, you're like, are you sure about this? This is before her childbearing years. Ancestry, I'm sorry. Girls are having babies at 10 sometimes, even back then. Yeah, she married her uncle. I was like, what? I think that's the only instance I have of someone marrying their uncle so far. But it's a little, seriously, that shit is wild. It is wild. It is wild. Anyway, at this point in time, including the first time, I think, maybe not, I am aware of 6 times that my tree has turned in on itself and one branch married another. And a lot of them are in these 3 or 4 families that form like almost the root, the trunk, the main trunk of my tree. And it still bugs me out every time. What are you doing marrying these children? Just wait. Wait. This is your first cousin. Why are you marrying your first cousin? Why are you marrying your niece? The fuck? Just for me, that was just like, he did what now? Did what now? But this is not uncommon on these trees. It's not in Puerto Rico. I'm learning to say Puerto Rican because that's what it's supposed to be called. But yeah, so we only got through maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 of the pointers that I have written down for this. So I had over 13. I think I had pretty close to 15. So we're going to have to do at least one more on the wild shit in my tree that I'm finding as I'm learning it. But I think we can stop there. I think that's enough to chew on for one night. Ending on, he married his niece. At any rate, I am going to go and finish my face, and we'll come back and we'll close up the way we usually do when I'm doing a get ready with me. So here's our completed look. I'm going to take the glasses off and show you the close-up as usual, but this side is starting to fall apart, so please be aware of that. I am wearing a red-green duochrome from the Jackie Aina palette. I don't know if it's showing up. I know I've had problems with that in the past. And we've gone a bit more, well, on this side it's being a little putz, of course. Of course. It would do that, right? We all know this is my eyes, right? That's because the one eye is starting to water a little bit, and when it does that, everything comes down to touch. So this one looks cleaner than that. Happens all the time. I'm not unhappy with this. I probably would change the lipstick. It's not doing anything for my teeth. But that's my teeth. Old teeth. I'm old. Seeing a dentist is hard because expensive. But moving on. But beyond that, I'm pretty pleased with it. Anyway, so there is actually quite a bit more to the whole weirdness in the ancestry tree, or in the, the tree at all. I'm sure the same weirdness would show up in any place else. I do have my, I did do a DNA thing with 1, 2, 3. Who are you? 1, 2. I can't remember. 1, 2, 3. Can't remember the name. And I uploaded my DNA in a couple of other places, mostly to see if I'd hit some more matches. But I will tell you, I don't spend a whole lot of time at them. I think some people do spend more time at some of the other places, but I much prefer the way Ancestry helps you put things, sort of helps you put things together. And honestly, I don't have. Obviously, I spend quite a bit of time on my tree. And I just don't have the time to put into 3 or 4 different places. So I pretty much stick with Ancestry. That's the only experience I can really give you. So if you're with Get Match or, Lord, I can't even think of some of the others. My brain is like, what? You want to do what now? You did what? You're where? There's a couple of others where I've uploaded to. And if you're interested in those, I really can't help you with any advice on those. But my main advice for Ancestry is you can look at the hints, use them as bouncing points, but don't take them at face value. The hints are pretty much membership driven. So members put in information or accept or reject information that comes up in the records. And then what they accept ends up coming down to someone else who may have the same relation person on their tree. And a lot of those people don't read. So the second thing is please read. Please, if you're going to do this, read the documents. One of the biggest complaints I've seen so far on the trees is that nobody reads anything, and because they don't read anything or they don't pay attention to the details, which is important, that it just really messes up the hint system, and there are a lot of people who just don't even bother with it. I bother with it because I like to have some place to start with my research, but I don't necessarily stick with it because, it could be wrong. For many of them, it's likely to be wrong. And, even if you have somebody who's an experienced, I can't even call it, genealogist, I guess, who works with these trees all the time, they can make mistakes. I've had a couple of different people who've had quite a bit of experience work on my tree where I have found mistakes because they didn't read, mostly. There are details that they didn't pay attention to, names they didn't pay attention to. It is rewarding and fulfilling, and I'm really enjoying discovering it. I feel like I'm discovering more of myself in the process and the person I could have been, which sounds odd, but I was raised white. I did not have contact with my family, so my Botanicals family. So being connected through this tree and being able to talk to those people, but being connected through this tree and doing a lot of reading, I really do feel I'm getting closer to my roots and the person I could have been had I had that input as I was growing up. At any rate, that is it for the day, and I hope you like what you've seen. And if you do like what you've seen and you're not yet subscribed, I hope you will subscribe. When you subscribe, please hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. I currently upload 3 days a week. It was going to be 2 this week, but we actually got something up for that. 3 days a week, that's Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you're part of my notification squad, please check both your bell and your subscription to make sure they are both still active. And if you choose not to subscribe, I would be disappointed, but understanding. You are always welcome back here, and when you do come back again, don't forget to bring your shamar, a cup of tea. You can bring a shamar too. Can you bring him to my house? We don't have, never mind. I'm being horribly bad. I am happily married. I love my husband, but I wouldn't mind if you brought over a shamar. He's a good looking man. He's a good looking man. Alrighty, so we are going to go ahead and give this a sip, and then we will be on our way after being so freaking goofy. Okay, so the black tea did mellow out a bit. There is still a hint of that bitterness, and there's definitely not enough sweetness to turn it into like chocolate. That's it. Hope you have a good one.